My name is Linda Cherry. I am a retired school teacher and principal who moved to Crawfordsville 5 years ago to help with family. Little children arrived and they needed help. My son and daughter-in-law needed help. So we both were educators, and when we retired, these were things that we picked up, and the Sailor's Valentines did not start with me until after I retired and had some time to collect shells and to explore it. Sailor's Valentines, which is the original use of shells by women from the island of Barbados. They looked at it as an opportunity to make money. And they also used resources that they had at hand. So they found shells on the beach, other kinds of sea life, coral, whatever. And they also found from ships discarded boxes. And these were compass boxes that were used on the ships to control navigation. And the result was they married the two together, the boxes that they found and the materials from the sea that they found also. They also were looking for, of course, making a living, and they found a ready available group who were interested, and that was sailors who had been on long voyages, and the voyages then turned into years instead of just being a short-term thing. And so the sailors were looking for product, things to send home to remind people that they were still alive and that they were loved. And so the focus has always been on love and caring for loved ones. And so most of the themes are connected in Sailor's Valentines are connected to hearts and flowers because that's what they wanted to send home. Some Sailor's Valentines have messages on them, be mine, old-fashioned Valentine kinds of sayings. As time went on, the changes in the use of Sailor's Valentines, today there are about 125 people in America who make them, but they are made all over the world. They are made in the traditional boxes, and the reason they did that was that you had a distance of about 2 inches depth that you could put things inside under a glass cover, and they would be protected and would stay whatever way you put it in. The shapes of things have changed. People in today's world like to have squares and rectangles rather than the octagon boxes, but that is the traditional way that is done. I have taken and gone another step, and that is to use shells in a variety of different ways. So I use them to make ornaments, I use them to make decorations on mirrors, and the classic thing that I make are the 8x8 pictures, which are not in traditional form, but I use the traditional methodology of how they are put together. They stay with the themes of hearts and flowers, and for the most part, they are done with, I would say, at least 95% of mine are natural colors. So the idea is to find colors, textures, shapes that can marry together to become a visual that is pleasing to look at. I use a lot of other sea life things, shark's teeth, sea urchin spines, all sorts of things besides shells that make it interesting and add additional color. This exhibit is intended to show modern interpretations as well as the traditional means for sharing Sailor's Valentines. It was a very popular art, 1850 to early 1900s. Queen Victoria was a collector. All of the rich people, the Astors of America, were collectors. So it was considered a kind of a rich man's game in terms of the collections. And today, if you go to American museums that have historic things, as well as European ones, you will find sailors' valentines. There's a larger collection in England, of course, because of her collection, and also I've seen some in Germany. Today, people in the Asian cultures really are getting involved in use of sailors' valentines, and there are some that are coming out of Japan that are just truly incredible. The detail work is very, very beautiful. So it is a kind of cultural connection for the women who were in Barbados that started this, but today it is an art form that is appreciated all over the world. I purchase all kinds of shells online. The sources from Pacific, of course, the Pacific area, so Philippines, India, Malaysia, Indonesia, all sorts of shells come from the Pacific that are interesting in color and different than things that we can find in East Coast or Caribbean. There are very specific shells to specific areas of the world, and literally there are some that are only found on one island or Australia or something like that. I purchase about half of what I use, and I pick at the beach a lot of shells. And the general idea is that I'm looking for texture, I'm looking for colors, I'm looking for shapes, I'm especially looking for size, because you have to be able to fit everything inside the box and no higher than maybe an inch and a half. So in order to keep things under glass, you have to be able to do that. Some shells are very fragile, and so you have to use them in a glassed-in format. Some shells are a little tougher exterior, and so they can be used in more open work. They are all, remember, the home of some natural animal that lived in our ocean, and so the result is that you may find tiny little holes, and it's not a flaw, it's an exit hole that the animal that lived inside left, and so they use that. Those that are in cone form, the animal can get out, and they had a form called an operculum that was like a trap door on many of those kinds of shells. And so if you go to the beach, you can find the shell, and you can also find the trap door. You can find the operculum. The designs are always started in the center, and you work from the center out. So you need to find the center, and then you radiate lines out on your artboard before you begin, so that the structure of the format is that you work from the center out, always. It doesn't matter what the edge is, so it can be 4-sided, 8-sided, that makes no difference, but what you have from working from the center out, you can see that you can expand it, you can increase the sizes, you can use more detail, and you can also begin to move things. So like in this particular place, the sea urchin spines are fanned, and so that gives it another sense of movement. Movement's a very important part of sailors' valentines, in addition to, of course, things like color that are very important. I picked at the shore about half of the shells that are in this particular piece. A lot of time spent at the beach picking shells. And making ahead things like flowers, all of that I pre-make using children's modeling clay, setting the shells in and then setting them with glue so that they will stay together. This piece is one of the traditionals. It has a center that is called a tiger's eye, and loads of the shells around it I also picked. It has a part of an octopus's brain. It has all kinds of sea urchin spines. They come in all kinds of colors, sizes, textures. And this particular piece was shown in Philadelphia the year that I made it, and it was a first prize winner at the Philadelphia Shell Show, which is held at their Natural Science Museum. So it's a piece that I have spent a lot of time on and shared with many people. The colors in this particular one are all natural, so just looking at the variety of the colors that are available in nature are just amazing. They have some interesting names. These 4 shells that are around the center are called flamingo's tongues. And if you saw them, if you could reverse them, turn them over, you would see that they actually do look like a tongue that's been rolled up. But they're also very, very beautiful, I think. The blue-green pieces are limpets. There are limpets all over the world, but these particular ones are Pacific limpets. They are not found around here or in America.
Red shells, the red snail shells. What are those?
Red snails, yeah. I buy them. I don't find those. And they are, I have found them, but they're pretty rare. It's a Caribbean shell.
Mm. Yeah. Is that an actual, when you say it's a tiger's eye?
Yes.
Can it be any kind of stone, or is it?
They come in different colors. Tiger's eyes might be, this one is more on the green tones. There are browns. There are some that are kind of orange. It is a shell. It's a shell. It's a shell. It's just called that. Yeah. They come in a variety of colors and sizes. I used some in a piece I was working on this morning, and they are probably not even a quarter to half an inch. So they can be all kind, and they were black. So there's such variety. It's just a matter of finding them and figuring out how to put things together. Yeah. Mussel shells from Jersey Shore are the dark blues. This is a mirror that I've done, and again I've used the turquoise blue. This one is very important in terms of color design. You do the borders first. This is just the reverse of doing the center out. You're working from the edge in. And I pre-make all the flowers ahead of time, so that, but it's kind of free form, and it's super fun because you can use a lot of things where you only have 1 or 2 of something, rather than trying to make a pattern where you need 20 or 30 or 40, you know. So it's diverse, and I think very interesting. And I've made about 10 or 12 of these. This particular piece is, as I said earlier, a piece that you work from the outside in. All the flowers were pre-made, and sometimes things do not have quite enough shine to it. You have to remember that all these things have been beating around in the ocean, and so sometimes they get kind of beaten up. So even though they may have some flaws, they usually have enough interest. And I also use a little clear nail polish where needed to sort of bring up color. That is particularly true in the navy flowers that are here, navy blue ones, because they have very fragile edges, and so they would crack. But by putting on a kind of a retainer, by using a clear nail polish, it makes it look better, brings the blue up, and also makes it sturdier so that it can be out in the open. I think I like putting shells with shells, like taking and putting them together in arrangements that allow each of them to kind of shine or be special. Things like these pink coquinas are everywhere on the Florida beaches, and they come in probably 20 or 30 different colors, from very deep colors to very pale colors, and mixtures of blues and pinks and purples. So I think that that is an opportunity to kind of pull together many colors that, and you need to make sure that you do some repetition. So that helps balance visually. You're trying to make some visual balance, but you're also trying to make the interest of the colors work for you. The other thing to think about is that shells, when you find them on the beach, if you found these shells on the beach, you'd say, oh, ugly, brown, kind of gray. Many shells are polished. Now these have not been polished. They're rough on the back, but they have they're a bivalve, so they have a closed piece, and so the inside of the shell is the part that's beautiful. And as you can see, they come in basically a blue-green, but they're light or dark edges, light centers, so it's kind of a mixture. There's also in this piece a lot of coral that I've found on the beach, and this particular kind of work allows you to use pieces of things that you don't have a full shell or a full piece of coral. So you can use bits and pieces to put it together. There's a lot of money shells on it. These are things that were used as money in Africa for many years, and in some places it's still used as money. So there's just all sorts of variety, whatever you'd like to look for.
Very cool.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now we're going to get more into the you questions.
Okay.
How did you get started doing this?
I guess like all good things, it started with a book. My daughter-in-law gave me the gift of a Sailor's Valentine book, which was the original one that had pictures of all the things that the women in Barbados had done and the history of it. And I received that as a Christmas gift. We had been with my son and daughter-in-law in Cape May, New Jersey, at the shore, and we'd seen the book in a gift shop. And we also saw my first Sailor's Valentine, and that was about 2004 when I first saw them. And from there, it was just kind of taking off, collecting shells. The early ones that I just made from things that I actually found myself, so they tended to be in the tan, brown, white family as the shells that we can find along our shores. But as I expanded in my interest, I began going to shell stores that bring in shells from other countries, and now I do a lot of buying online. So things evolve, yeah. Of course, people in Florida are very interested in shells, and I sell my work at a shell shop in Florida. There are also people who have Sailor's Valentine shows in Sanibel Island or Fort Lauderdale. A lot of the work there is Sarasota has shell shows during the winter time. So it's a common craft that is done semi-seriously by people, and some people just find specimens and want to decorate their homes with it. My husband and I are both retired educators, and so we came to Indiana to help with the children, but we each have our own interests, and he's an avid tennis player. Well, that's not my thing, but we've developed a relationship over 50 years that makes us so that we each do what we like, but we do things together as well. Well, they are very close to the ground. Little people are really helpful at picking things up off the beach. And they also have excellent eyesight. So when you're going to the beach with them, and they come to Florida with us very often when we go to visit, and when they pick on the beach, we send them on missions. Today's coquina day, go find a lot of purple ones, and off they go. So they each have their own baggie, and they collect as much as they can. So the kids are very into it and very helpful. And they watch in my workshop at home. They're always around checking out what's Grammy making now. So it's really, it's a fun family thing. I belong to a couple of organizations here in town. I'm part of the art league, so that has turned to be a very nice collection of people that I had not met. And of course, being newer to the community, it takes a little time to get in. I also am on the board of Dusk to Dawn Bereavement Services, which is a support group and counseling service for people with losses of loved ones. And I'm on my church council at Christ Lutheran Church. So I've kind of expanded into the community in terms of the kinds of efforts that I do.
Okay.
Well, I guess people are always curious about shells, and of course the first thing they think is, are those colors natural? That is a common question. And I once in a while will use something in a what they call a dyed shell. Those are mostly crushed clam shells that have been dyed colors, and so sometimes I do that. Very rarely. Mostly I like to use the natural. Pardon me. And I guess that's part of the appeal to me, is that when I begin a piece, I never draw it out. I start in the middle because that's what you do, but I really never know where it's going to go. I have no idea. I focus on the center, and then I work from that, and I try to repeat colors. So if there are purples in one area, I want to make sure that that purple or a purple shows up somewhere else in the piece. So repetition of color, repetition of shapes, fanning, all of those are techniques that improve the visual. But this is not something you do very quickly.
No.
It's a lot of time. And I've been selling, the past few years, I've been selling about 25 pieces a year. And that's about all that I can produce. It just takes a lot of time.
How long does, like the little black framed one?
That one would take maybe 4 to 6 weeks. And the problem with it is that you can work a little, and then you gotta let the glue dry, and then you work a little more. So you cannot work consistently. You work for an hour, and then you've got to leave it alone, or leave it overnight so that it's thoroughly dry before you move on. Otherwise, you wind up messing things up. A big piece like this, I'd work on it probably a couple of months. So it just, it depends, but it's not fast. It's a very slow, kind of methodical process. Do what you love, have fun. I think that the day may come when I don't want to do this anymore, but I don't see it very soon. This is I'm now maybe 14 years in working on it, and I see that I am improving in my skill, and I'm also more excited about trying new things. So that's what it's all about, is having a good time and trying to make things that are visually pleasing to others. Do craft shows, and I've done that, and I sell through the store in Florida.